And it's the you said that you were 2 blocks away, and then, of course, there were situations that all the reality that in the streets came into the story.
Yeah, a lot of the time, the barometer for us when we were doing like a dramatic scene in the streets was we would do the first 3 or 4 takes, shots that we would do. We would do the melodrama. We would look to see how the street was responding to the action, and most of the time, we would have some stranger interfere with the scene. They would come up and they'd try to stop the fight, and or they would, are you okay? And then they would come up to, they would see us like a block away, and they would say, "Are you getting this? Are you getting this? Because this is crazy. This is fucking crazy what's happening over there. You have to be filming it." And we said, "Oh, okay, thank you." Sometimes we would get people who were very concerned who would go up to the actor, Caleb, who plays Ilya, and tell him that he was a piece of shit and that he was going to hell. And he was always in character, always. So he would say, "Go fuck yourself, mind your own business, you yuppie scum," or So he it was interesting for us because that became the barometer. Is it obviously reality isn't what we're always after, but it's definitely the stage, and we were always looking to, like, I had a friend who has had trouble with drugs, heroin, and he's been clean now for a few years, and we were shooting the scene where Mike and Harley they meet up, and she says, he doesn't want to buy dope off of you, he wants to kill you. He goes, "He wants to kill me, I'm gonna fucking kill him." And he starts but they have that big fight in front of the Barnes and Noble. My friend, he just moved to the neighborhood, and he moved to the Upper West Side to get away from the neighborhood he was living in because there was a lot of drugs there.
So the fiction kind.
So he doesn't even know. I know he knows he's a filmmaker too, and he sees me, and I have the monitors like this, and he comes up to me and he goes, I said, "Yo, what's up? What's up?" His name is Ben. I said, "Ben, what's up?" He goes, and I'm in the middle of listening to the scene, watching it. He goes, "Yo, the block is hot." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "It's crazy. Did you see that junkie couple over there? They're fighting. It's just like in the Lower East Side. I can't get away from it everywhere I go." And then he was like, "You think they got any good stuff?" And I was like, "Come on." I said, "You don't want it." And and then I said to him, I said, "That's a movie. This is a scene that we're recreating." And he couldn't believe it. He thought, again, this was another moment where we had an outside force coming in and kind of looking at the severity of the situation.
You guys mentioned the girl. She was not an actress.
No,
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's a movie star. And actually, I just received an email from from the movie that she's doing now. She's doing a sci-fi film that takes place in 2309.
Like a big movie.
Yeah, and she plays like a tank girl type character, and it's that to me it's amazing. I mean, she's also doing another film with a great director who I can't mention.
So you guys saved her life or something.
In a way, I mean, I'm not God. I don't play God. In movies, directors, you're recreating life all the time, and that kind of is like playing God, and that's why filmmaking is the most fucked up art form. It's the most perverted art form. We were not put on this planet to make movies, but it's, in a weird way, it's our greatest spaceship. It's our only way that when we're all gone, we're gonna have all these movies left, and we're gonna show how we interacted and lived our lives on a day-to-day level. But yeah, when we were doing another film for the Diamond District, and we were deep in character doing research for months. And one day I saw her on the street of the Diamond District, and she was dressed like a Diamond District girl because she had a temporary job there. And I asked her to be in that film, and then I met up with her, and I realized she was a street kid. And she was talking to me about Ilya and this, and we were trying to find a role for her. And then, I got...
She was writing a book?
Not yet. And then I got very involved with her, talking with her, trying to find her work and jobs, because I thought she was a movie star. I said, you shouldn't. And then she admitted to me, I'm homeless. And I said, "Do you have a drug problem?" She goes, "I have a little bit of an opiate problem." And I said, "Nobody has a little opiate problem." And she said, "Yeah, I know, I have to get over it." And I said, "You shouldn't be living on the street. You should be living in a mansion in Hollywood somewhere." And now that's a whole other conversation. But after some traumatic events, we all realized that her story was so engaging and crazy, and I could never really get into it. So I started to ask her to write about her life. We commissioned her to write, and she wrote the most incredible book. And she was writing so much, and she would write the whole thing in Apple stores. She would be standing for 10 hours at a time, typing, writing faster than I could read. And then I would share them with Benny and Ronnie, and that was when the movie really came to be. And then we decided to adapt her book into a screenplay. And then we said, from the beginning, she was playing the lead. And then we were bringing actors from California to try to see who could play Ilya and who could play Scully. And then that became the challenge.
I just want to, just what you said before, the purpose of wasn't going in and, like Josh said, playing God, because if that's the case, I think the movie would have failed. If the only reason is to pick her out and make her an actress and make her a movie star. That wasn't really the idea behind it. It was, she has an interesting perspective on this life that she's living now. Let's tell it. And that's all we were focused on then. And then afterwards, I think it just was an amazing byproduct of it. But you know what I mean? It wasn't like you were going searching for anything like that. So
the story found us. We didn't find the story.
Ok, guys. Tá aí uma senhora que quer fazer uma pergunta. The mic there? Oh, this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but no, it's
going to be English.
It's very interesting how you capture the immediacy and daily fight of these people, but all these characters are stripped of we don't know anything about them. And I was wondering if first of all, in the book that she wrote, whether we learn more about her, and whether this was also a deliberate choice, because it's almost like they're reduced to an animalistic existence. We don't know anything about why she ended up that way, why Elia ended up nothing. So, and also I'm curious how she did.
Sure.
Okay.
I knew a little bit here and there about her past. We were never, I was interested in it in a personal level, but in terms of the film, we had one scene where she talks about it, but it took away someone we know saw the film, and they had a very interesting response, and their response was, "What a scary movie." And I said, "Okay," and she said, "This is a film of people with no past and no future." And that was kind of like a moment of triumph for us, because I'm attracted to street life. I'm attracted to these people. A lot of these people are my friends in the movie. And I'm attracted to them because as somebody who battles with trying to remain or find happiness in any sort of way, I always think that it exists in the moment, in the now, living in the now, in the moment. And, I think this is a strange example of how maybe the now is kind of not the place to be, but it is also, because whenever we tried to impose a past onto the film, it felt wrong. It felt like this isn't the right representation of this world. When you meet these people, you often don't know their past because they don't want to know their past. They're running away from it, and that it felt like conceptually it was the wrong way to go with this film. This is heaven knows what. You don't know why these people are here. Heaven knows what happened to them. Heaven knows what their life was like before.
It's akin to kind of running, and if you just see somebody run by you on the street screaming, and then you want to learn more about them, you follow them and you try and see what happens, and you learn as much as you can. But in that moment, you don't know anything else other than that they were just running and screaming. So that's kind of where we catch these characters, and then we move with them from there. And if you learn about their past, you do. I guess maybe with Mike, you know that she knew him from before. But I always find it's a little bit more interesting to kind of pick up those little breadcrumbs as you go along, as opposed to being given it all up front.
Yeah, I will say that her life, Ariella Holmes, the girl, I now know a lot more about her, and weirdly, because the film premiered at Venice, and her father her mother. I met her a month after her mother died, but she had no relationship with her mother. Mother was a drug addict, living in New Jersey, and she had no relationship with her. She ran away from home at 15, and was living on the streets from 15 on, and her father left her when she was 7, and he lives in Ireland. He's an Irish guy, and I didn't know much about him until the film premiered in Venice, and he saw all the news, and wrote her saying, Ariel, I can't believe, because she asked him for money once. He doesn't have money, but she asked him for like $50 once, and he money wired it over to her, and she lied about what it was for, and so she was really nervous that that this one person who she did have in her life would find out that she was kind of a. And then actually at the New York Film Festival, the photographer Richard Kern, who was one of the first people who wanted to put her in like a music video, he was as affected by her as I would. He hadn't seen the film until he saw it in New York, and he was sitting right next to these two people who said they were her aunt and uncle from New Jersey. And they had no idea about anything. They barely knew her also, and they said that they saw her once in the past 5 years, and she came to their house, and they accused her of stealing something. And she said to this day, she goes, I swear I didn't steal anything. But something went missing, and they see her, and, they figured it. Then they saw the movie, and after the movie, they looked at each other like, it was her who stole the... And I told that to her, and she goes, oh, man, that's not true. I didn't steal it. But yeah, I think that, the only character that maybe could have, because I hang out with the real Ilya, I've hung out with him a lot, and I know him really well. If you spend a good amount of time with him, maybe a week, 2 weeks even, you know that he has a grandmother who lives in Queens who pays for everything. She gives him $100 every 3 weeks, maybe every 2 months. And I learned that but it was very hard to figure out. Now I've had lunch with her, and she's Russian, and she lives in Queens, and so that's the only character. But the movie doesn't function if Ilya's anything more than a mystery, because that's the attraction, is he's this black metal mysterious dirt bomb, and that's.
And he only comes in and shows up whenever he needs to. He comes in only when he needs to pull Harley back. So.
Yes, but that would be the only character, and then I think the Mike character we had in the script at one point, a mother who lived in the city as well. But again, it was, it took away from the immediacy of their life, like the thing that you're responding to, the immediacy of their lives. Once you start to take steps away from them, I think you lose the experience, and that was our concept with the film.
Sound-wise, how was this process? Because if you are in the different blocks, sometimes, how can we hear so well? There was no.
There was there.
Yeah.
That was the it's very difficult. Thinking back on it, I said, because I remember I was just in Switzerland. I was talking to another filmmaker, and I said, yeah, I was holding the boom, mixing the 4 channels. He's like, how is that possible? He couldn't believe it. But yes, because we were so far, I was as close to them as possible with running the sound, and it was actually very helpful for the performances to be able to be so close and hear it. But the goal always was to have that contradiction, to be so far away and yet to be so close at the same time.
And then in the sound design, we went crazy. We kept telling the sound designer, put a sound there, put a sound here, and he said, this is too much. And
we would say, we need to add this here. He's like, you're not going to hear that. And we're like, but it needs to be in there. You'll feel it. And it's like, okay. And he adds like a little sound of something shaking, or we really went and wanted to make it as intricate as possible. And so,
yeah, because before we started filming, I had spent probably 8 months everybody, the extras in the movie and all of the characters who their actors playing, they all knew me as just Josh. And then eventually I'd say to them, one person who I thought was interesting, who I thought we could try a rehearsal with, I would go up to me like, hey, actually I'm making a movie. And to them, everybody has these crazy dreams because they all have dreams. Everybody in that world has some insane dream that sadly they won't realize. It's actually incredible to see the Facebook messages on Ariel's page, because she posts the pictures from Japan and Venice, and you see these people saying like, this is insane. What drug am I on right now? They can't believe that she's gone from this girl living, sleeping in front of a church for years to now like be literally seeing pictures of her at a restaurant because the festival director wanted to take her to Cipriani. And she's like sitting there, and I never realized it. There's a picture of her sitting with probably like 35 glasses, and each glass has a different type of liquid in it. And you think like, why do we need all this? Like, you really think like, this is bourgeois. Like, what is this bourgeois world that has all of this liquid? And like, it's all going to waste. But the picture is literally her, and it looks like she's like. You wouldn't know she's in this like dress that someone lent her, and it's really like a dream, and it's kind of incredible. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I would say them, hey, I want to do a rehearsal with you, and I'd pull them aside, and they would be like, they would take me seriously, but not. And then we would do a little rehearsal or an audition to see if they can act, and then they'd say, yeah, I'll do it. How much you paying me? I'd tell them how much. Of course I'll do it. So then they show up the day of, and we show up with our crew. I mean, our crew wasn't big, but it was something, and we had these nice cameras, and we're putting microphones on them, and they're just looking, and they're like, this is crazy. They look at me like, this is crazy. I had no idea that you, Josh, who I met, they just assumed I was some guy who lived in the park or something, and now I'm making the movie with them. And when we had the New York premiere, it was like crazy. A fight broke out during the middle of the screening at Alice Tully Hall. It's like a very beautiful theater, and a few blocks away from where some of them, hang out all day. So I don't know. It was I don't know, interesting to see that, kind of pulling them away, but also pushing them right back in.
From the streets to the red carpet. And just one other question. By coincidence, there's also two films that deal with street people. The Warren Moverman film, Time Out of Mind, and the Jennifer Connelly film. It's the idea for a filmmaker like you guys to film these stories that we don't know the past. Is that something? Why didn't we see that before?
See what? You mean us make that?
No.
Filmmakers now, it's three films.
I will say that there was a review. I don't read a lot of reviews, but there was a review for Time Out of Mind out of Toronto. And I like Oren Moverman's movies. But someone said Time Out of Mind is heaven knows what for your mother. So, I mean, no offense to mothers, but, it was, I just, yeah, because you're looking at Richard Gere, and that's, and the same thing with, I didn't see either of the films, Time Out of Mind or the Jennifer Connelly film, but we had heard about the Jennifer Connelly movie when we were finishing the edit. Someone told us, oh, she's doing a movie. Yeah, she's living in the street. She's a, junkie. And
sometimes it just happens, it's a coincidence. While we were making this film, I didn't realize how much heroin was throughout the city. And then all of a sudden, there's 5 or 10 front page articles in the New York Times only about how heroin is come back in the United States. It's all over the country, and it's right while we're making the film. It's crazy. So I think it's just a coincidence that these things happen. It's not like we saw it and then they're doing that and we're doing this. So I think it's just like in the air maybe.
There's been a couple movies. There was Panic Needle Park, kind of. They don't. Yeah, but they don't. Yeah, that's a long time ago. But it's the same neighborhood. Jerry Schatzberg lives. The director of that film lives in that neighborhood still. He was kind of like a godfather to the project. But that movie doesn't really go into any of the characters. You're just kind of seeing the lives they live. I mean, that movie's very naked. You know, like there's no music at all, not one piece of music, even in the background somewhere. And I, you know, streetwise, but they go into it. There's a documentary. We discovered it while we were finishing the edit of the film. It's called Dope Sick Love, and it's made by two brothers in New York, and it follows two couples living on the Lower East Side who are both like dope and crack fiends. So they like, our editor always said, our co-editor would always say that it's like what happens to our characters later because they're older, and they lose their beauty, but you can tell they were once beautiful, and you know, it goes from just heroin to heroin and crack because as you go farther and farther, you need more and more to feel something, you know, and that's a really fucked up movie, but it's almost like no style at all. It's just a guy holding a camera like this, following them around, wide angle, like very little editing. But there's a scene actually in the movie where the boyfriend takes the bag and like throws it around the corner, and she goes looking for it and can't find it, and they have a fight on the street, and she ends up throwing like a big tub of soda at him, and he like rips her shirt. But it's crazy because Ronnie was saying, he was like, people are gonna see your movie and think it's like the Hollywood version of that movie. But you know, yeah, I mean the guy who plays Mike, he's in jail right now. You know, that's not a Hollywood version of that character. He'll get out. He's gonna get out in March, and you know, we're gonna do some more projects with him, and he already has. It's cool for him because he can do acting now too. But he's, you know,
it's just important. The last thing that we wanted it to be was kind of like a cliche, because there are a lot of movies about this subject matter. But when Josh showed her writing to me, that's when I realized, okay, this person has a very unique perspective on this, and we can do something new and show something new here. So.